have a party together and celebrate your top 10 in points positions
Thank you.
if there were no stages, but it means nothing.
We're live. Welcome to the Money Lap Podcast. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon Cassill on our podcast about all things motorsports. As always, check out themoneylap.com for the newsletter about all motorsports 3 times a week. And before we dive into it, Landon, just to give the listeners and some of the viewers out there on YouTube what they can expect in this episode, we're going to be talking the wild F1 race in the Netherlands and some of the ramifications from that. The Wild Cup race from Daytona and the wrecks, plus what we saw and maybe you didn't from those. There's some Formula E news. Obviously, the Xfinity Series was at Daytona as well, and I'm going to tell you what it's like to race at a superspeedway with no friends. Kind of felt like I was back in the 8th grade. And, of course, our Cup Series playoff grid predictions. We'll do that at the end, but we start the PR lap, Landon, and some nice feedback on our newsletter. Jonathan Howe on Twitter said, not going to lie, I haven't had a chance to get to the podcast yet. Well, that's unfortunate. But the newsletter is the most perfect piece of motorsports content. That's very nice. Also, we had some feedback to our polls where they said, great article, links, and concise news roundup in such a busy time in global motorsports, almost like the speed report in email form. That's nice of them.
That's cool. I love it. We're always talking about the podcast. It's getting so much love, but the newsletter is really some of our finest work, I would say, at the Money Lap. The whole team does a really good job, and it's high quality. Reads a lot like Morning Brew. If you know that, it's just focused on global motorsports. 5 minutes or less, you can get everything you need to know.
It's perfect. Yeah. So we didn't get any Apple reviews. We're at 107, stuck there. I have not lived up to my word, Landon, of getting a Cameo, by the way.
So did you get the Cameo? Did you get a message from me by chance?
Well, I finally did. Yeah. And thank you for calling me out. Thanks to David, our buddy there, David Taylor. Yeah, I got it, and we'll dive in. I'll do it after this episode. How about that? I'll do it today. We're recording this on Wednesday, and I'll by Thursday, by tomorrow, you'll have it. I think
you know what? I'm sorry. I know people don't want us to interrupt, but let's just play it right now and let's listen to it here because I think you need to get this message. Hey Parker, you know who it is. So I've got a message from one of our best listeners on the Money Lap podcast, David. Daphne, say hi. David wants to remind you that we have achieved more than 100 reviews, which means time for you to pay up. Time for you to join Cameo so that the fans can finally get what they want, whatever it may be, selfie videos of you on Cameo. There's a lot that you have to offer, but even more importantly than that, you need to deliver on your word and the promise that you made to the world. So thank you, David, for contributing to this and getting Parker to, be a man of his word.
All right. Message received.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
that was a very long-winded way of saying live up to my word. Hey, we had on Spotify, we had Wade Barta say, Landon and Parker are a great duo. Happy I found this podcast. We're happy you're here as well. And just some housekeeping news on last week. We didn't mention it beforehand, but I announced I will be returning to Big Machine Racing in 2024. So excited about that to go after an Xfinity Series championship. But we're going to hold off on talking about my races, or the Xfinity Series, because we'll talk about that in the Xfinity Series section in my race specifically later on in the episode. But Landon, you know what I did before the race this past weekend? Because it was like a 7:30 p.m. race.
Yeah, what was it? You took a nap?
Well, no, I didn't take a nap. But I remember back in February, I was kind of tired doing the Truck Series race that Friday night. There was like an 8 o'clock race. I remember yawning, running like third or something. And I was like, all right, I gotta have some caffeine, something to pump me up. So what did I do before this race this past weekend, where I obviously came in there 3 points out of the bubble in the playoffs? It was an intense race for us, an intense moment in our season. And I approached it mentally, the idea of I wanted to lock in from the lap one. I thought about the super speedway races I had won and said, I was always locked in. so mentally in those last 10, 20 laps. I could barely tell you what happened, but I was like, I wonder if I could bring that intensity for 100 laps, for a whole race, and start off on lap 1 like that. And I was like, that's my goal. That's what I want to do. And I was thinking, though, I was like, what can I do to help me get in that mode? And so what popped in my mind? Four Sigmatic, Think Coffee, supposed to use, has functional mushrooms to wake up your brain. Well, guess what? That's what I drank before the race. It locked me in, was able to get in there and finish P4. As I said, we'll talk about it more in detail later, but was it fighting for the win late in the race? I felt mentally sharp the entire time and ready to go. So if you want to try the coffee I drank before this past weekend's Daytona race, go to foursigmatic.com, FOURSIGMATIC.com. Use the code MONEYLAP for 15% off. Check out Think Coffee. It's great, and it powered me to Daytona.
I had always heard that Dale Earnhardt had said that he felt himself like exit his mind kind of looking at the car from a third perspective when he was in the zone, that he couldn't even feel his arms on the wheel, that it was like an out-of-body experience when he was in the zone. Do you think that Dale Earnhardt Sr. drank Four Sigmatic Think Coffee?
No, and I know he wasn't because I don't think he was around when
okay.
he was still alive. Rest in peace. But you know what? It's the same. So not to go on a total tangent, but Ayrton Senna had talked about that, right? When he was in an out-of-body experience driving around Monaco to do that lap that was 1.8 seconds faster. And I think it was also the race that he was leading by a long shot, and then he ended up getting taken out of that subconscious when they asked him to slow down, and he wrecked while leading and threw away the race at Monaco. And, for me, when I won Talladega in 2017, I remember being in the press room afterwards, and they said to me, they go, hey, what about this move and that sort of thing? And I said, to be honest, I don't remember anything. I was like, I can't tell you exactly every move I made. All I know is every move I made was the right move. And I was like, so in the zone, so basically locked in that in that subconscious, and there's, you know this, there's a huge amount of data out there for athletes that when they talk about going into the zone, they're actually sort of in the subconscious, because your subconscious brain can take in so many more bytes of info than your conscious. The difference between normal people and professional athletes is we can perform at a high level in our sport in the conscious, but we all can kind of do the things we're asking to do in our subconscious. Anyway, I felt like, going to this race, I worked all week on, training myself to just enter that mode, that locked in mode. And I'll be honest, there's major portions of the race this weekend I can't tell you, what moves I was making. I just knew they were the moves I had to make, and I had to do it, and I just let my brain do it, and they were right. Yeah, that's the zone you want to be in. It's the high performance one. So let's talk about high performance. Let's jump into some of the biggest stuff from around the motorsports world, starting with the return of Formula One from their summer breaks in Ibiza and the south of France and Martin Garrix's concerts, and anywhere cool that the drivers were at. And they descended upon the Netherlands, the home of Max Verstappen, where it was a wild affair with rain throughout the weekend on and off. And with that, we got a race that involved tire strategy, managing the rain and the dry conditions, and back and forth. Before that happened, Daniel Ricciardo had a wreck in practice that broke his hand, unfortunately. So Lawson was put in, who was actually pretty quickly up to speed. But this race, when I look at that weekend, it once again, it presented every opportunity for another team or driver to rise above Max Verstappen, to find a chink in the armor, to find even a stroke of luck. As I put it, it would take an act of God, to stop Max Verstappen, and they had that, and yet he still won the pole and won the race.
It's unbelievable. I mean, we talk about it, he's half a second faster than the field, which is a lot, right? And if a race goes smoothly, it's going to be tough to beat anybody that's fast, that much faster than the next car. But like you said, when there's adversity, sometimes those teams, even when they've got the best car, the best driver by that much, they make a little mistake, strategy error, they get stuck behind somebody. They don't change the when the weather conditions are changing, especially in Formula One, you see that a lot. Somebody can leapfrog with a unique strategy, catch them off guard, and it's just not happening. So it's not only are they bringing the best car and best driver to the track, they're just continuing to make the best decisions, which is just unbelievable. Did you see the wreck with Ricciardo?
Yeah.
Did that? I kind of want to go back to that for just a second. Was that not kind of weird the way that happened? Like, was there something on the track? Do you know? Can you kind of walk through what happened there and what you think you saw?
Obviously, this was all going on Friday, which I was pretty focused on our stuff, so I didn't get to dive into it too deeply. But I watched the replay, and it just looks like, like there was something on the racetrack after the McLaren of Oscar Piastri had crashed. But yeah, that was really weird. And the fact that, as an open wheel driver, even a stock car driver, if I'm going head on the wall, I'm getting my hands off the wheel. He kind of held on to it.
Yeah, but it happened so fast, and I feel like he didn't see the McLaren in front of him spun out. And it was like when he went into the corner, it's a left-hand turn, basically hairpin corner, but he had to turn right on corner entry at the last second to miss him. And then you can't turn right and then turn back left that hard, and the car's not going to make the turn. You know what I mean? So it was almost like by turning right and pointing himself at the wall and then having to turn left, the car didn't want to make the turn. And then at the same time, he's on the brakes, and you can't, braking and turning doesn't do well at the same time.
You know what? Well, not to cut you off, sorry. I was just thinking real quick, because you're going to have a really good thought on this. That corner is high banked, left-hander. You run up an awkward angle at the top. What does it remind you of?
Oval racing?
Yeah, but Bristol.
Bristol, yeah.
And what happens at, it's high speed, and what happens at Bristol? You could be on the front stretch, the car wrecks off of turn 2, and before you know it, you're in it, right? Because it's like, you can't see around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't see that far. I mean, with banking, actually one of the first lessons I learned as a teenager racing on high banked racetracks was that when you would go to a high banked racetrack, you couldn't have a tinted windshield. Like, how we'll have like a sun tint on the top of the windshield, even a street car, you might have like a black stripe at the top of the windshield that'll kind of block the sun, or a sun tint. When you go to a high banked racetrack, especially a high banked short track, you can't have as much of a sun tint at the top of your windshield because you're looking higher out of your windshield than you normally would on a flat track where you're looking maybe lower out of the windshield across your hood. And so, I don't know, maybe Danny didn't have his eyes up. You're going into those corners fast, it's a higher speed corner, but tight because of the banking. So just the reaction time was maybe just off just a little bit.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. That's you look up in the top corner sometimes, and you're because of the angle at which you're going around the racetrack. A bit of controversy in terms of the decisions made by some of the race teams as the weather came upon, more rain came upon the race late. There was a red flag. They restarted, and most people were on the intermediate tires, even though it got to enough water maybe that I would thought you would want a wet tire. But there's a bit of a thought process with this wet tire in Formula One that it is not worth it. It's 6 to 7 seconds a lap slower apparently than the intermediate, and if it ever gets to the point where there's enough water that you're trying to avoid aquaplaning, which was what the wet tire is for, they red flagged the race. So there was only one car that went to full wets, which was Esteban Ocon, and he was screaming at his Alpine race team, being like, "Do not." This was the wrong choice. Why did we go on these tires? That sort of thing. He was upset. And I personally had been like, I thought that was the right decision. And I thought Aston Martin threw away a chance once again with Fernando Alonso to get a win when they put on the same tires as Max Verstappen. I was like, do something different. Come on. But apparently they're not worth doing it. Yeah,
but where he's right is that still, making your own analysis on it. Is F1 going to, are they going to throw the caution for this, or the red flag for this? That's part of the game, right? NASCAR, we consider red flagging and getting to halfway and, stuff like that, where the weather's at on if we think NASCAR will call it or not. We consider that in our strategies. So I can understand what he's talking about, where he's saying, don't even put me on full wets, because if I need full wets, they're going to throw the red anyways. So what's the point, right? Let me stay out here and try to survive, or put me on the intermediates. So I can understand the frustration there and it seems like that's a common thing in wet weather racing across the board, that, I think that racing, the race stewards everywhere in NASCAR as well, like, we've had some bad experiences with heavily wet weather racetracks that they are, willing to throw a red flag on a track that looks like it's really flooding or has water moving across it. Parker, can't hear you, buddy. I don't know why he's muted.
All right, well, we got disconnected there. I can't remember what I was saying. So anyway, rain racing. Oh, I was saying all the global motorsport series are working on it. So Formula One has tried anti-spray devices to limit the water spray in wet racing. NASCAR has mud flap sort of things. Sports car racing has been trying some stuff. So a lot of series are working on that to maybe get to where we can do more heavy downpour wet racing. Mm-hmm. Another controversy this week in the world of Formula One, flexi wings, a clamp down on this. So this has been a thing in F1 for a very, very long time. From the early 2000s, I can remember onboard shots of looking back at the front wing or the rear wing, and you'd see this car as it goes down the straightaway and starts to hit terminal velocity. The wings would bend down and flatten out, right, at the right point. And so you're like, wow, what is the engineering behind that, right? Well, of course, it's always been around. It will always be around because the teams are going to continually work with materials and that sort of thing to allow these wings to create immense downforce when they want it, and then try and flatten out and get as little drag as possible down the straightaways. So a bunch of teams, the FIA basically clamped down on a bunch of teams this weekend, and I mean, I think the Aston Martin was one of the ones that was called out on this, and it's always these onboard cameras that seem to catch it, right? The most visibly that there is.
Those darn onboard cameras. I love that. That's cool stuff. That's the innovation in motorsports that you love seeing. It is cool to see like proprietary components and designs that just are superior, but then, things that are innovative, like, what am I trying to say? Interactive with their environment and innovative. That kind of innovation is really cool. We've seen stuff like that that's in NASCAR that's literally the same thing. I definitely want to draw it back to NASCAR and give our engineers some credit too, because in NASCAR we haven't had the luxury of designing our wings and designing our spoilers to be able to build them to do that. We've had to work around the parameters through the years. And back when we had steel bodies on our cars, we had all kinds of deflections that you would have on the car to manipulate the body at speed, even though it made it through inspection. So the right side of the car is a really important part of the car. Mm-hmm. That would always be built in such a way that maybe it had bracing that was really brittle and it would go through inspection and the bracing would be solid. But then when you got on the racetrack, even if you were on the grid, maybe the crew chief would walk by the car and kind of beat into it with his knee and break the brittle brace, so that when you're going 180 miles an hour, it would compress into the side of the car and create, almost like a spoiler on the side of your car. And then, in the super speedways, NASCAR has always watched the deflection in the spoiler quite a bit. So you'll see in inspection, I don't know what they do now with the next gen, but they'd always had kind of like almost a torque wrench type looking tool where they could measure, make sure the spoiler was strong enough that it wasn't trying to deflect. And then one of my favorite little ones, and this was a pretty well-known one, was when a lot of teams were cutting their wraps and manipulating the vinyl wrap, the stickers that wrap the car, with, just they would cut them and then make a flap open so that when you get up to speed, it would almost peel up. And believe it or not, that actually could create an aero advantage. So there's those are the innovations that are exciting in motorsport, and those are the things that are tough when we go all the way back to our common conversation, which is Should we standardize the race cars and, cramming down on these rules and stuff. It's funny because we love talking about these little innovations, but yet we also, out of the other side of our mouth, we slap hands on that stuff and say we don't want those things to happen, and we want the cars to be equal and fair, and it's easy to contradict ourselves. But for today on the Money Lab, because I don't see anything else scheduled on our run of show, we're going to glamorize the innovation in motorsports and speak highly about it.
I know that, I think back to that era, 2018, where you had the Reddit community calling out the 9 car at times for some interestingly placed vinyl and tape in areas, and you would have these high def photos. You could see the body just deflecting in areas and caving in on the right side, and you're like, the whole side of the car becomes a wing at that point, and it's like, how's that thing go around this track 8/10 faster than I want? Well.
They'll make a lot of changes between inspection and the racetrack. The worst one, the funniest one for me from the driver's perspective was this happened to me in the Cup Series, and my team said, hey, when you get into the car, pull this pin on the on your windshield brace, and make sure you don't do it when any officials are looking, and the windshield's going to deflect a little bit, but it's worth about 30 pounds of downforce. And so I did it, but we were at an intermediate track. We were going 200 miles an hour. The windshield was deflecting so much, it was like I was like Mr. Magoo looking out my windshield. I was like, guys, I really can't. It's disrupting my vision here. And they're like, well, and that's where they're like, well, it's 30 pounds of downforce, so you either need to figure out how to drive with it, or you're hurting yourself. That I'm like, okay, I guess I'll figure it out. But it would deflect the whole windshield, and then the first 3 or 4 inches of the roof, there was a really thin sheet metal, so it was, the whole thing was kind of deflected, probably a couple inches.
Oh my god.
It's pretty fun.
It's straight up. It's the opposite of the Ricky Bobby, Fig Newton thing. It's like, no, we're actually trying to get performance, but can't see, man. Help.
Right.
Those are such cool things. Well, we should probably do like a show one day of just like, I'd love to get some different technical people on here and just talk about those all across different motorsports, right? The ones in F1, IndyCar, those moments, those crazy stories. And NASCAR, stuff like that hasn't been told before. That'd be so cool, because
that would be fun.
We all have stories. We all have things. I did, I won't put it on this podcast, but I'll just say I did a test at a certain major organization in the mid 2000s where I pulled a tab inside the car and it was worth a second. That's all I'm going to say. So it was insane.
Did it make it to the racetrack though? Is the real question.
I don't think it did. The thing we did, we believe another team had at the time. So that's where I'll leave it. We'll tell that story another time. Formula E, our favorite burgeoning racing series, is officially going to adopt pit stops again with fast charging, which is sort of a revolutionary thing. So we got to just sort of dive into this just for a second. This was supposed to happen this season in 2023. It didn't. But it's coming, and this is something the Porsche Motorsport bosses really wanted. I think a lot of people have wanted. And so this will add pit stops for the first time since 2017, 2018, when they used to change cars, essentially. It will be labeled as an attack charge stop. And the way it's understood to happen right now is they'll need to add around 3.85, and I'm going to I always screw up electric terms, but kilowatts, I believe, in about 25 to 30 seconds, meaning no other additional work can happen while it's recharging. And here's the interesting thing. So battery technology has been far behind electric car technology for a long time, and it's rapidly catching up, but it's been sort of the bottleneck in the electric car industry. And a lot of people are working on it. But one of the things that's interesting about batteries, if you know this from your own iPhones and products before the iPhone, really, when they didn't have battery management, is that when you refill a battery that isn't fully depleted, right, it can have loss because it creates memory to thinking it's full at those points and that sort of thing. So one of the things that they're going to have to consider in all this is sort of how you manage your battery in terms of getting it to the optimal condition to charge. Also, heat can be a massive detriment when you're trying to charge. Think of your iPhone getting super hot at times. So that's going to be something they have to deal with. So this is going to be fascinating and a massive technical challenge. So, we'll see how this pans out, but they're going to have stops.
This is, talk about exciting innovations in motorsport. This is kind of cool. We're in uncharted territory, and this is definitely something that people have never had to do before in racing. So I love it. I also, it excites me that, obviously Formula E is kind of leveraging this as like you said, an attack charge. Will be cool to see if this provides an opportunity for Formula E to maybe have longer races, and actually, have some endurance aspect to it too. Would be cool. That's not really something we've talked about when we've talked about Formula E, but I would imagine just like NASCAR, taking a Garage 56 to Le Mans, maybe someday Formula E might want to have an endurance race to kind of prove the longevity of their cars. That would be kind of an interesting goal for that series to have.
So an endurance open wheel race, city center. They do like a 24-hour with the lit, the streets lit, and you have to jump in and out of them. This is our entry point to Formula E. Come on, let us in. This is such a cool idea, Led. We need to pitch that. Our buddy Jeff Dodds, he'll love it.
Yeah, let's do. Let's get him back on here. We're going to talk about Formula E endurance racing.
Yeah, we're going to be like, look, we love the format and everything, but let's start on a Saturday, end on a Sunday, the first ever 24-hour endurance race in a city center, so fans can come in and out. Times Square, we're taking over.
Oh my gosh, that would be cool.
Jeff, we have it figured out. Call us. You know where to get us. I want to be in that race. We got to be in that race. We need a Money Lap team.
There we go.
One guy who would probably be invited and would destroy us all is Scott Dixon, who once again put a clinic on in the IndyCar series to win at Gateway by a margin of 22.23 seconds. Only 3 cars on the lead lap. Once again, out-strategized, saved fuel, and was able to go faster than everyone doing it. This guy, he might be one of the top 3 race car drivers in the world right now in just every facet. So in his prime, what a legend.
Yeah, especially in IndyCar, you just don't see that kind of domination anymore either. In NASCAR, we used to have their stories of, large margin of victories. And obviously NASCAR races are structured differently with stage breaks and, overtime stuff. It just seems like in such a large field of cars, it just seems like we never have an opportunity to see someone run away. Even though we have had some long green flag runs lately, that kind of margin of victory is just huge, and I think that's more of a reflection on Scott Dixon than it is a reflection on IndyCar racing. IndyCar racing is as competitive of a series right now as ever. So I think it just tells you what kind of domination that was on Dixon and his Ganassi team's effort that weekend.
Definitely. He's I think you said it best, that it's an incredibly competitive series that he's just doing an excellent job with, right? In the series right now. Some cool news for IndyCar. This race had strong viewership, over 1.1 million people, and it's now the 8th IndyCar race in 2023 to surpass 1 million average viewers, and this now makes it currently the most watched IndyCar season since 2008. So in 15 years since the merger. So 2008 would have been when Champ Car and the IRL joined back together to make the unified IndyCar series once again. Most watched season since then. So even with this domination, not deterring people from tuning in. Cool to see. Great to see growth for IndyCar. I love that.
I haven't yet. I guess I don't have. I'd have to look at actual numbers to back up this thought. But it just from my perspective, it seems like you've got F1 had this meteoric growth, and then it's leveling off. NASCAR is choppy, but heading in the right direction. It seems like on viewership, but it also is dependent on the broadcast partner. It seems like NBC delivers maybe a little bit better viewership than Fox. IndyCar is just chugging along, with a steady lineup. It seems like their popularity and viewership is just incrementally increasing.
It does feel that way. And I think, part of that has been the partnership with NBC. Not to tout, once again, I do work for them, but I do think, the two of them made a commitment to each other, which has been powerful in terms of putting Indy 500 on NBC, which where all the other races are. It used to be split up where all the races would be on what was Versus before NBC Sports, and then it was, the Indy 500s on ABC, and then a couple races on ESPN. It was mixed up, and now it's just one partner, a lot of races on broadcast television on NBC proper. I think the timing, they do have a lot of races that start at 12 o'clock on Sundays, which is right after an F1 race and right before the NASCAR race, which I always think is a great idea. I love that positioning. On this Sunday, they didn't have a NASCAR race or anything to go up against, so you could watch F1 in the morning, and then you had IndyCar that afternoon. So I thought that, that's a key part of it, but yeah, definitely the partner. So speaking of series that have been on the up and up, I feel like in a lot of ways, the Xfinity Series had strong numbers, had signed that new deal with CW for 2025 and beyond for 7 years. And we did race at Daytona this past weekend, which I came in the race 3 points below the cut line for the playoffs, behind Riley Herbst. And as I said earlier in this podcast, I came in with the mindset of this is a cutoff. I wanted to put myself in the position that I felt like I had to win this race to move on to the playoffs. And I did that because I felt like that was the best way to get me to lock in, as I talked about earlier, to be in the state of mind that I would normally be in the last 20 laps of a super speedway race where I'm trying to win it. And I wanted to do that from lap 1 onward because I wanted to go win stages and win the race. I didn't win stages, only got stage points in stage 2, but I did feel like, and I'll even say this, Bubba Wallace got a lot of flack for not talking to us on the pre-race before the race on Saturday. And I was like, I don't have a problem with that because before my race on Friday, I didn't at intros. I don't know if you've ever done this. Well, I did an interview, but otherwise I went and sat by myself and I stayed alone and I didn't want to speak to anyone. I didn't want to be near anyone. And I kept just putting myself in position in my mind of making moves and being in the race car and just constantly playing in my mind the moves I was going to make to really lock in. And, everyone at Big Machine Racing did a good job, and we found ourselves late in the race in a position to try and win. Riley Herbst had some issues with the steering box and that sort of thing, and it came down late to one of the weirdest moments I've ever had, which was we had late race restarts. So it was me versus Justin Allgaier, but then from that point, I had the 2 car who is ahead of me in points and absolutely does not want me to win that race. I've got the 11 cars ahead of me in points who absolutely does not want me to win that race. They're behind me. I've got the 00 whose teammate, the 98, is now behind me in points, does not want me to win that race. So I was in the weirdest position ever.
We usually complain about not having friends in super speedways and nobody helps me, but rarely do you have a position where it's just like, not only do I not have people willing to work with me, I have people who want to work against me.
Dude, before the race, I go up to Justin Allgaier. I told Dale Jr. this the next day because Dale had a funny comment on his podcast that I was listening to this week after our conversation where he was like, could you imagine getting into a car and knowing there's 2 RCR cars, 3 Colleague cars, and 2 Stewart-Haas racing cars who absolutely do not want to help you nor want you to win this race? He's like, could you imagine doing that? And I was like, that's the mode I was in. And so I went up to Justin before qualifying and I said, hey, dude, here's the deal. I got no friends. I know this. Of the 15 competitive cars at the front of this field, 12 of them are just not going to work for me, basically. If I'm in a position to push you, I'm going to push you if it's the best thing for me, just so you know. You might be my only friend out there. And sure enough, it came down late, and I was pushing him to the lead, and I was like, oh, this is so ironic. It always works that way.
Yep. Nah, you did a really good job.
We came out of there, 4th place finish, puts us 20 points above the cut line. One of the weirdest experiences I've ever had in racing. It gave me... I already had a massive respect for the Cup drivers who have been in that position from, my broadcast side of things. But that to me really showed me how weird it was to come down to the finish of a race and not everyone be thinking, how do I get the best finish? Right? Like, I don't know if I've ever had that in my career. And so it really gave me appreciation for the drivers that have been put in that position, the playoffs, they're thinking about that. So I thought that was really interesting mindset.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was fun to watch.
Just one last thing on the Xfinity Series. This fan, Trey Ryan on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, put out this cool thing, and I've been harping on this, and I thought it was just validation for what I've been saying a lot about this series, our season this year, but he put out standings in the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, without stages. We would be 7th right now, 15 points behind Josh Berry in 6th. So kind of validation for our finishes, and also exposes our lack of mid race performance. So
shout out to Trey Ryan for having the overhead photo of Kevin Harvick's old school 2000s twisted body car in his X profile picture. That's an awesome picture, and thanks Trey for being a big fan of motorsports and NASCAR and paying attention. But I don't care about those point standing scenarios. They're so stupid. So Parker, if you did that just for your own PR lap number 2 to make yourself feel better, that's fine. But stage racing is a strategy. You can't just put some points if there were no playoffs scenario. Let's use the old point system. No, it's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. So yes, you've done a great job finishing races, but stage racing is a strategy. So whatever. I don't know. You guys can all, you and Jeb Burton, and I'm just looking at this list of guys that are really high up in points without the stages. You guys can all go, have a party together and celebrate your top 10 in points positions because there were no stages, but it means nothing. But thank you, Trey Ryan.
I had an inkling this was going to be your response, and that's why I was so excited.
That's why you put it in, just to irritate me?
I just wanted you to do that exact thing. You were going to be like, there's no reason to bring this up.
I fell for it. I took the bait.
A series that does have stages, and it's the top of this whole game, the Cup Series, race Saturday night. We talked about it, but a really fascinating race, a race that was compelling from start to finish, but 2 really, really big accidents. One was Ryan Blaney getting turned as Ty Gibbs got spun off of turn 4 with a head-on collision about 180 miles per hour into the outside wall, deflecting the safety barrier to basically the point of it touching the concrete barrier. It made me physically ill watching it. And then we had the wreck of Ryan Preece down the backstretch where he flipped unbelievable amount of times. The thing I'll say about that was being on the ground, pit reporting. I don't know if I've ever experienced this. That wreck happens. It's happening. I'm watching on our monitor. Then I look up at the big screen, and then as that car comes to rest, you could hear a pin drop in that place full of hundreds of thousands of people. Everyone went silent. The broadcast went silent, of course, because we all just thought, "Oh no! Like this This could have been the worst thing." And thankfully he got out and was released from the hospital recently. And we haven't heard much more than that, but my goodness, that was some scary wrecks.
Yeah, I actually didn't see the Blaney one live. I saw a replay of it, but I watched the Preece wreck live, and that was unbelievable. So there's been obviously at this point it's Wednesday. A lot of people have discussed it, talked about it. Preece has, obviously got out, has tweeted, said he's coming back. I don't know if that means he's coming back this week or coming back. Stewart Haas really hasn't said anything. Nobody's really said anything about him, have they?
Yeah, no, they haven't yet.
Other than his tweet. So, hopefully he is feeling up in good spirits and healthy enough to come back. But if he's got to take a week or 2 off, I don't think anybody would blame him for that either. But the cars, it's interesting because and we've had this conversation with someone who won't be named, but it's like they finish these wrecks and people, NASCAR sometimes will say, "Oh, the car held up well," and these are the types of wrecks where you go, "Well, I think we're all trying to figure out if that's a good thing or not." Maybe the terminology is that the car held up well, meaning that certain bars did their jobs and the driver remained safe and contained. But the damage to the car, obviously from the driver's perspective, when it comes time to these big impacts, you want the car to absorb the energy, and so that the driver can not take such a big hit. You want the car to crush. One thing that was a little concerning that was interesting to see was how quickly the roof hatch just went out on Preece's car. It was almost instant, so he took most of his rolls with no roof hatch in the car. which is just a huge gaping hole right above the driver's head. So you've got
Scary.
a really scary opening there for any kind of intrusion. And to me, it's like, man, I think about how many times we've flipped these cars or had heavy impacts versus how many times we've actually needed to use a roof hatch, and it makes me wonder if the roof hatch is necessary to have. Of course, the way NASCAR stuff works, and I'm glad I don't have to be the one that makes the decision, but about the time we get rid of the roof hatch, somebody will, have a car that is on fire for too long and they took too long to get out of the car or something like that. So, but yeah, it was definitely an interesting, definitely a wild wreck. A wreck that, kids like myself would probably try to recreate that on a diecast car. and make a diecast car, look like it did in that wreck. So, I don't know. It seemed like kind of a heavy conversation. I was going to pivot this into a spoiler diecast, but it seemed like I was going kind of heavy with it. It seems a little tacky to do a ad read right off of this. Let's do that. We'll do the ad read later. What are your thoughts on these wrecks?
Stay tuned for spoiler diecast.
Stay tuned for the spoiler diecast, man. I was getting a little too serious right there to just turn around and be like, "Well, check out spoiler diecast if you're looking for a Ryan Blaney front crunch."
Oh no. I think this car is already heavy, and I think you said it well. Like it held up well, but at when is that correct, right? And this is a really tough thing because you're trying to standardize a race car. You're trying to create a car that provides entertainment at a reasonable cost and keep people safe.
Right. You want it to be modular. We're trying to make it to where they're easy to work on and easy to build new ones and replace them and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a balance. It's gonna be learning, and there's talk of obviously that maybe this is generation 1 and there's a second generation next gen car that has to come about at some point because we've learned so much in just 2 years of what could have been better with this car, right? And I think that is a really key part of this is that the teams are not really able to make improvements. If this is a race team, as we talked about, that has these issues, they make that improvement. They do it themselves, whatever it is within the rule book. And now you can't really do that. So you're at, it's requiring NASCAR to have a process, which they have instigated from last year, obviously with the rear end clip adjustments, the front end clip adjustments, the side intrusion adjustments they made from the first Talladega, which was very fast. They are moving in real time and acting very quickly. So it's just, they are going, that's going to be the process we're going to have to get used to, is that this is going to happen. NASCAR is going to go to work involving the teams and the manufacturers, and they're all going to make an update, and then it's going to be implemented across the field, right? And that's just how it's going to work, and this is new. So I think we're all very thankful that both those drivers walk away. But yeah, there's still a lot to do, and there's always going to be. It's a moving I hate this term. It's like it's a moving target, but it is. It's constantly moving target. It's always going to be. You have 200 cars. You have 40 cars. 36 to 40 cars going 200 miles per hour in a condensed 2.5 mile bowl, with surrounded by walls on both sides. Stuff's going to happen.
Yep.
That is just going to happen, and we're never going to know all about it. So it's all for our entertainment. But the race was good, and I think, I'll say one last thing. I saw some officials after the race. I tried to go look at the car, not to be sneaky and I want to say I was snooping around. I wasn't.
Right.
I just, where we leave the garage, I saw that they were unloading the NASCAR Garage 56 car that was in a NASCAR hauler, and they were going to try to load in the 41 car, take it back to the R&D center and evaluate it, and that's part of the process, right, of making improvements.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, okay, maybe I'll find the car here or ever, and this is as I'm trying to leave. And I didn't, so I just looked around. I didn't see anywhere. I believe they had it sort of covered or in one of the closed garages, so people wouldn't do exactly what I was trying to do. But I did see some officials, and yeah, everyone looked a little, not like a little, like, just sort of, wow, that was scary, right? But
yeah,
the common, I spoke to multiple officials, and the common thought process was, hey, look, we'll now know what to work on, and we see some things, there's things that can be better, and we'll do it. And it's like, okay, great. And that's the process. So it will happen fast. The race was damn good. Chris Buescher getting his 3rd win for RFK on an absolute tear. But I want to, before we dive into that, he was pushed. And this is where I want to bring you in, Landon, because I think you have, people have talked about it. This isn't a reaction show. We're on Wednesday. But we want to dive deep into something that occurred here that was interesting. The car that pushed him to the win was the number 6 of Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski, under the red flag for the Ryan Preece wreck, did something we've never seen, which was drive his car in circles on the apron under the red flag to put out a fire that was within the race car.
Yeah.
He was not penalized for this. People are angry. Some think it's ingenuity. I say, in his case, his other option was to get out of the car, so why not? I'm all for him doing what he did. I think that was actually one of the smarter things I've seen, and leave it to Brad, who thinks entirely out of the box at all times, to come up with something like that. But should he have been allowed to continue racing?
No. I think that he should have been parked based on NASCAR's rule, I guess, unless it's changed. And then also, I guess I don't even have the rule in front of me to know, does the rule have, NASCAR has a lot of ambiguity typically in the rules that allow for them to just make a judgment call. And that's fine. Being from the e-racer side of things and how we promote events, you understand the need to be flexible sometimes in the calls that you make. But so I can understand NASCAR's perspective on it. But in my experience with that rule, we used to still drive our cars under red flag conditions. They would, NASCAR, back before the damaged vehicle policy, NASCAR would display the red flag, and it wasn't necessarily something that anybody liked, but you would still drive to pit road if you had damage, or if you knew you needed to pit, you would just drive to pit road and serve the red flag under pit road, but maybe get your team a chance to look at the car or prepare their tools. Even though nobody could touch the car, they would see the car up close as opposed to parking on the backstretch or parking wherever. When NASCAR came out with the damaged vehicle policy, they made a concerted effort in their rules and their new policies to say there is no driving under red flag. Red flag means red flag. It's for the safety of our track workers. It's for the efficiency to be able to get the track cleaned up. We don't need to be looking for cars that are still moving, safety of the drivers that could be injured. So that to the point that NASCAR actually, wrote this new rule that said, we could park you for violating this. And so people did get parked. I got parked once. I don't remember who got parked. I do feel like someone parked it at Talladega one time, but I got parked at Indy for basically doing exactly what I used to do, and I was a complete unforced error on my part. I pulled up to pit road under red thinking I was preparing my team to fix a damaged car. It just blew right past me that the DVP did not allow for that, and NASCAR parked me for it. It was the end of my race. And they were very, very clear with me at the time that, sorry, red flag is red flag. That's the new damaged vehicle policy. So when I saw this, this stuff on Twitter of Brad driving in a circle to, essentially fix his own car for himself, it was just like obvious to me that he should be parked. I didn't really know, like, I don't know. Like, I'm with you on the creativity and the ingenuity on Brad, and he is always thinking, and he's got, he's very good for that. And I even I'm with you, Parker, on the idea of like the game theory around it all, where it's like, okay, well, I can let my car catch on fire and I have to get out, or I can make this attempt to put the fire out by driving in a circle. And what's the worst case scenario is they park me for it. So I guess if you're Brad made the right decision. To me, it's NASCAR that should have parked him for it. NASCAR, there's a lot going on, and maybe NASCAR didn't see it happen in real time, but at some point, they put it on a broadcast of what happened. So I don't think, yeah, I mean, that's just where that was kind of my thought on it, but I just wanted to give some background on my understanding to the rule. I think Josh might have the rule if he can post it in our chat or something, but and actually, even if I guess I'd love to see the rule and maybe read the specifics of the rule here. But let's see, here's the rule. Unless otherwise determined by the series managing director, repairs or service of any nature or refueling. What am I trying? The chat is messed up here. Or refueling will not be permitted when the red flag. Stop typing. Or refueling will not be permitted when the race is halted due to a red flag. All work must stop on any vehicle on pit road. Work must not be resumed. All work must stop on any vehicle on pit road and garage area when red flag is displayed. So that doesn't actually read the part that I'm thinking of where we weren't allowed to move the car at all. The red flag signifies that practice, qualifying, or race must be stopped immediately regardless of the position of vehicles on the racetrack. I don't know. It obviously NASCAR holds in their purview to still do whatever they want.
Yep.
So it's interesting that, when the DVP was first put in, NASCAR made it clear to us drivers that if you do not adhere to a red flag, you will get parked. And they did park cars because of it. Myself was one of them. I think that part might be in the DVP section of the rules, but is interesting scenario. Now, from a promoter's perspective and a race fan perspective, I'm glad Brad wasn't parked because I wanted to, watch him. I wanted to watch him race for the win. He was actually my pick to win, so I'm glad that he was still in the race. Right. I'm glad he didn't get parked. I'm glad that he was safe and his car didn't burn down. But I don't know. He probably should have been parked.
And I do agree. I'm with you because I just find it odd. But it is what it is. I think I had the wrong caution though. I think his caution, the caution he did that was the one with the wreck off 4 where all the cars had flat tires. And that was actually something interesting that I haven't seen many people talk about. But this was really fascinating because I was on pit road and I'm on, doing the broadcast and I'm watching this all go down. And I'm listening to Kyle Larson's radio, which I'm sure some fan has already found his in-car because he even references that his in-car is going to sound like Joe Logano's from Pocono yelling at the track, the safety workers to push his car. But what was fascinating was it was about a 10-minute affair of him and Cliff Daniels trying, and the 5 team trying to describe to Kyle what to do because he had 4 flat tires, but the car was pretty much good. And so they were trying, it was almost like an endurance race. They're like, all right, Kyle, tell them there is a tow hook on the front left of the car to pull that and tow the car from the front, not from the rear. And like Kyle's shouting at them, I guess. And then he'd keep on the radio and be like, they won't listen. Or like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And then he's like, okay, hold on. And then you go silent for a while. And then he comes back. He's like, all right, I'm going to sound like Logano on the in-car here. It was pretty interesting stuff, but he eventually got pushed back around. They ended up losing 2 laps, I want to say. And so he actually still had a car fast enough to run the lead draft, though, late in the race and was trying to help the 9 car there. So, unfortunate because what occurred there that was interesting was in this next gen era, something we have become accustomed to is when cars spin out and blow the tires, they can't drive back. Well, there were so many cars that had simply just flat tires. NASCAR red flagged the race to line up all the safety trucks to push them or tow them because there's so many. And I have to think everyone looked at that and thought, okay, there's going to be a better way to do this soon because it was ridiculous. It was anarchy. It probably removed the 5 from having to finish because they just couldn't get towed in time and that sort of stuff. Yep. And with a car that could have most definitely driven if it had tires, we got to figure this out. So I think the sport has to look at that because if you want to keep doing this racing where there's going to be wrecks and stock car racing, like the idea of stock car racing is, the idea of stock car racing is like it is a car that you drive it through the garage. If we do practices the old-fashioned way, you go in and out of the garage, you back the race car up in reverse. There's no race cars in the world that allow themselves to use reverse ever. Like, well, stock car racing is unique in that form. So, for a car to be so in such a position that it can't drive back because it's flat tires is just I don't like that.
Thinking of a race car with flat tires that just can't, sitting there with 4 flat tires that is what am I trying to say? Like a sitting duck, or it's high centered, basically sitting on flat tires, makes me think of my son's collection of die casts where he's peeled all the rubber tires off the cars and they're sitting on the ground. Speaking of die cast, you need to check out Spoiler Diecast. I'm finally getting this ad read in, and it's on a little bit lighter note than the last one. With one of the largest inventories in the industry, they have over 800 unique products currently in stock, including diecast and apparel offerings for NASCAR, dirt sprint cars, IndyCar, and F1. And with their pre-order system in place, you can be sure to get your hands on the latest diecast releases without the long wait at spoilerdiecast.com. What's even better, Parker? All orders ship same or next day. That's pretty darn good. And they offer free shipping on orders over $20. Plus, use promo code MONEYLAP to receive free shipping and 5% off all orders. That's right, 5% off, the most aggressive offer in the racing industry, I think. Don't wait. Head to spoilerdiecast.com today and get your racing fix. And before I finish this, we have been talking about doing some kind of cool new promo with Spoiler Diecast. I think we're nailing it, drilling down on it. Might have something to do with me signing some diecasts of my own that are on there. I don't know if we're going to throw them in for free, do giveaways. Maybe it's if you buy a certain amount on spoilerdiecast.com that you can get a signed diecast of mine. So keep an eye on the pod here over the next couple weeks and spoilerdiecast.com, because we're going to be doing a pretty cool promotion there.
I love it. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And there's some other news that came out this weekend. Kurt Busch officially announcing that he is retiring from NASCAR Cup Series competition. As many know, last year at Pocono had that wreck in qualifying and had concussion symptoms since then and has not been in a race car since, and now officially announced retiring. Just want to give a shout out to the 2004 Cup Series champion, an awesome teammate to me, a good friend to me over the years, someone that has given me great advice and been a helping hand at times in my career. You can also, if you want, go to spoilerdiecast.com and buy many Kurt Busch diecasts. So on there, I just checked. There's plenty on there. Go check them out. There will be no others. So those will be the final if you're a big Kurt Busch fan.
This is when they sell out, though. It's like he announces his retirement, and the Kurt Busch diecasts are gonna go hot. So if you've been thinking about getting something, I'd buy a Kurt Busch diecast right now.
Not to be morbid once again, but it's kind of like an artist when they pass away. Their art, there won't be any more art made.
Yeah,
there won't be any more diecasts for Kurt Busch. Yep. So go get those. They're limited, limited time only, or what am I trying to say? Limited quantity. Hey, what's the 3 things in racing you're not supposed to mess with according to the rules? The 3 holy
in NASCAR.
Holy items in NASCAR.
NASCAR. Tires, spoilers, and engines.
So the 98 team, Ty Majeski, had an unbelievable amount of speed at the Richmond race earlier this year. Won the race, was about half a second faster in the field. They had a tire and wheel taken away at Milwaukee and have now subsequently been penalized, where they received points penalties and the crew chief being suspended for 4 races. What do you think they did?
Usually when a tire is confiscated and a penalty comes after, it means you were trying to leak air out of your tires. And for those of you that don't know, or you're like, what in the world is he talking about? In a race car, when the tires get hot, they build air pressure. Eventually, tires get so much air in them that they start losing grip. There's middle ground. There's not enough air, you don't have good grip. You want the right amount of air and the right temperature to have the right amount of grip. Well, it's part of tire wear over the course of a long run. As the tire gets so hot, it builds too much air pressure, it loses grip. Believe it or not, if you could drill a hole in the side of your tire, a tiny little hole, not a big one, a tiny little hole in the side of your tire or in the valve stem, you could make it leak a little bit. If you could control the amount of air that leaks out that is equal to the amount of air that's building up at 200 degrees or 250 degree tire temperature, you would actually be the fastest car in the field by at least a half a second at a place like Richmond.
It's weird.
And when the very next race is another flat short track like Milwaukee, if you got away with it at Richmond, I would definitely take it to Milwaukee.
Oh wait, no, he was fast at ORP too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, weird. That's another short track. Huh. It's funny how that works.
So, NASCAR doesn't like it when you do that. We don't allow bleeders. There actually is in some racing series, it's kind of rare nowadays, but I've raced with them before in my career. There is a tool that you can put in the wheels of your tire, in the wheels of your race car. They're called bleeders, and it's a little spring-loaded thing that you can tighten the spring or loosen the spring, and you can set it to the air pressure that sort of the maximum air pressure that you want. So if you only want that tire to ever have 25 pounds of air pressure in it, you set the bleeder to be able to pop off at 25 pounds. And so when the tires get above 25 pounds, it just pushes that spring up and lets air out of the tire, and it maintains the tire pressure at 25 pounds. That's a legal thing in a lot of racing. That's a real thing. But since that's illegal in NASCAR to run bleeders, people over the years have been pretty creative on how to bleed air in tires, to the extent of teams literally poking holes in their tires. This has happened. They drill with tiny little drill bits, or with some kind of tool that they've made where they knew the exact diameter of the tool that they needed. They've poked holes in their tires. There's been really creative little bleeders that have been built into valve stems. So that's kind of a cool little trick. I think Front Row actually got busted with some valve stem bleeders at Pocono several years ago.
Yep.
And actually, not to go down a rabbit hole, but the funny excuse from Front Row at the time was that they had no idea that they had valve stem bleeders, that they had bought those tire tools from another race team, like a larger race team, because small teams, and Front Row was a growing small team at the time. Small race teams buy old tools from big race teams all the time, right? They buy their pit boxes, they buy all their old stuff when those big teams build new equipment. So Front Row was saying, hey, we just bought all this equipment from this big team. We had no idea that all these valve stems were illegal. So that was kind of an interesting one. Who knows if they're telling the truth or not, but I would believe it, because that was a pretty big fine that they had to pay. I think that was well into six figures. I think that it's possible what was going on here in the 98 truck had something to do with the valve stems. There's, instead of having bleeders or some kind of actual custom made device, you could actually back off the core of the valve stem to where it just pisses air just a little bit, and then put the cap on and use the cap to keep the core inside the valve stem so it doesn't come out completely, and just allow that little air hissing out to manage the tire pressure the way that you want it to be managed. So,
and just hope hope there's no red flags.
And hope there's no red flag. Yeah, you get a red flag, you get a 30-minute red flag, and that thing's hissing air out. You're in trouble. So
you ever see? I think that was what was that? Was that 2006? Was it? Someone was at Martinsville. And there was a red flag.
And they had a flat tire and a red flag. Yeah. Yep.
It's like everyone's like, well, that's obvious.
Yep. So another nugget that's kind of interesting about this was the 98 truck's tire was confiscated before the weekend started, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I'm like this. I think didn't this happen early, like on Friday or Saturday? Now you make me question myself. Yes.
I don't know. Yes. Okay.
I'm getting validation here from Josh. This happened before the race, like before. So what that tells me there. NASCAR is very smart. They're great They're great at officiating. These guys are professionals. They know what to look for, okay? But they don't just randomly go take people's tires. Sometimes, I mean, they do. That's one of their regular checks. They do random checks. But it's just funny that this I would imagine, I would question if this actually was a random check, or if they got tipped off by someone. because race teams do not have very good, what would you say, jail yard
IP. They're not good at keeping IP.
They're not good at they don't there is no honor amongst thieves, I think is what I'm trying to say. And they rat each other out all the time.
Yep.
In fact, if I never ever wanted to be a NASCAR race director in my career, that's totally fine. But I would at least want to do it for just long enough to watch all the race teams coming in and out of my office in the trailer saying, hey, you need to take a look at the spoiler on the da-da-da-da car. Or you need to take a look at the tires on the 98. And then the 98 team coming in and telling me that I need to look at the ignition box on the other guy. And then somebody else coming in and telling me that somebody's cheating their body work. I can only imagine how much these officials get. And I know this also because I've been one of those guys that's walked into the official trailer and said, hey, have you ever thought about looking at the track bars on those so-and-so cars? So it is all politics.
Oh yeah.
But it is interesting that the 98 team got busted with this. I think the real question, Parker, I'll hand this off to you because I've been talking for 10 minutes now, is they got 5 playoff points taken away, a 75-point penalty, but they already have a win, right?
Like, yeah, so they still advance.
They've advanced to the next round. In NASCAR, rightfully so, they don't retroactively take wins away or things like that. So unless they found some real evidence that was being done at a race. So they're not retroactively taking anything away. So they still get to advance to the next round. They give a 75-point penalty, which I guess that doesn't really mean anything because they're advanced to the next round. There is a monetary penalty, $25,000, and the crew chief suspended for 4 weeks. But what's really the penalty here?
I think the biggest penalty is that if they had this advantage, it's gone.
It's a good point.
He got caught too early.
It's a really good point.
That's the biggest penalty.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean that's a.
You mean the fastest truck in the series, basically at these short tracks, was suddenly found with this, and now maybe they won't be so fast.
Yeah,
so I'd say that's the biggest penalty.
That's a really good point.
Oh man,
there is also NASCAR does not like it. The reason, going all the way back to the start of this conversation, NASCAR does not like it when you mess with tires, spoilers, and engines.
No, holy grail.
It's funny because it's the tires. They don't want to mess with tires. The tires I totally understand because they have a tire partner in Goodyear, right? So there's a sponsorship aspect to this too, right? Not to mention it's a spec tire. Everybody has to run the same tire. They don't want you manipulating them, but you just can't have people messing with tires when you have a huge corporation investing in the sport, putting their name on the line to they sell us tires, but somebody's got to buy tires anyways. But I can see that being one aspect of why it's just don't mess with the tires. We don't need this CEO. We don't need this running all the way up the Goodyear flagpole that people are manipulating their tires or the tires aren't good enough or there was a tire failure because somebody did something to the tires and now Goodyear, you just don't. You do have to be mindful of our partners with the tires. So NASCAR doesn't like us messing with tires, spoilers, and engines. NASCAR doesn't like being messed with because it's just those are such big ticket items that it's hey, if you cheat those, you're cheating. Right.
Yep.
We understand that there's
fuel. You're missing fuel.
Fuel's a big one too. Yeah.
Tires, engines, fuel.
Tires, engines, fuel, spoilers.
Yeah.
You just don't mess. You don't mess with them. The rule book can be ambiguous at times, and teams are creative, and we all love it. And NASCAR will rewrite rules, and they'll slap your hands, or they'll even give you a little fine. But tires, engines, fuel, and spoilers, they're just things that if you mess with those, you are cheating.
Yep. Well. We'll see what the ramifications are. In the Truck Series, also announced today, August 30th, that Matt DiBenedetto, the only name said incorrectly more often than Shane Van Gisbergen or Kligerman, will not be returning to the Truck Series team Rackley War in 2024. So he's moving on to something else. We'll see where that goes. In IMSA, the Corvette Racing won over Vassar Sullivan Lexus in closing the gap in the GTD Pro Series to 169 points. A win earns 350 points and second gets 320, so 2 more races in the season. They need a little bit more to get within striking distance of Vassar Sullivan. But we'll see that battle going down there between Lexus and Corvette. And then something else that popped up this week, the Superstar Racing Experience, possibly going to Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
We'll see. I don't know.
There's been kind of a rumor for a while, not just SRX, but there's been a rumor of a Saudi, scenario, whether it's with the RTA or through SRX or something. There's some kind of that's been a conversation for a while. So it's, obviously it was a little more hot and heavy when the team owners' agreement with NASCAR was in full force. We haven't heard much about that lately. In the teams and their agreement with NASCAR with the extending the charters and the new TV deal and whatnot makes me think that maybe there's a new TV deal probably done soon, or the charter agreement completed soon, because there just haven't been a lot of contentious rumors. This time last year there was just a lot of contention there, and there was leaks going out in the press, and people trying to use the media as leverage, and so you heard some stuff about that. Now we're hearing SRX rumored to be Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, it's one of those situations, right, where the silence is deafening. If it's not being discussed, most likely it means it's going well. And I, from what I understand, things are going well. I'm not going to just talk about rumors, though. It's not what we do here on the Money Lap. But you are correct. Since we've seen what happened with Live Golf and the PGA, I think all sports have been on notice of what's happened there, and motorsports is not immune to being a thing that I believe that Saudi Arabia and the billions and billions that they have to spend in trying to connect that country with sports and high-level sports to bring attention to them, motorsports is not immune for that. So we'll see what happens there. Donald Hawk, who is the head of SRX? I can't remember his title there.
CEO of SRX.
He had a statement basically just saying, everyone take a deep breath, about international event possibilities, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with SRX. They could be the perfect thing to sort of do that with. Some other stuff that showed up on the social media sphere this week I thought was cool was NASCAR Man, who's one of my favorite follows, just cool stuff, put together this thing that was basically the U.S. television average number of viewers for auto racing events so far in 2023, with the Daytona 500 and the Indianapolis 500 and the Chicago Street Race leading the list. But it's really fascinating to see where F1 ranks, where the Xfinity Series is, IndyCar, obviously, and it's a fascinating look, color-coded at sort of how many people are watching these races and how much of motorsports gets well into the millions of viewers, and how it's doing basically across the board. So I think it was a fascinating look. I don't know if there's anything really else to take from it. Cup has 27 of the first 28 slots, I guess. So that shows the power of the NASCAR Cup Series right now. But yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think, where's the first F1 one? It's the Miami GP maybe. And it's 30th. The first, 30th. So, I don't know. I'm still looking for those 50 million F1 fans that Christian Horner talks about.
Well, I think that it just it's a friendly reminder of two things to me, and they're both maybe I don't want to say contradictory of each other, but like it's a reminder that NASCAR is freaking huge, right?
Yes.
Like it's just a reminder that the Cup Series is you want to win motorsports in the U.S. You got to beat the NASCAR Cup Series. And Formula One, I don't think has done that or is anywhere close to it. But on the flip side, I think it is a fair, it's always good to remember that we have different bubbles that we live in, right? And Formula One definitely had some massive interest and still has massive interest in it, but it's very much on social media and it's through Netflix, and there's still real eyeballs, and there might be 50 million new Formula One fans, but they're sure as hell aren't watching it live on ESPN.
Well said. And actually, they so there was a article that came out this week that once again said F1 numbers, might be sliding, or we've hit the top already. And you had a ton of quotes from CEOs and CMOs that are invested in the sport now, saying they think that's preposterous and it has a lot of room to grow. And I don't disagree. I think it has a lot of room to grow. I think motorsports in America has a lot of room to grow, massive amount of room to grow. I say that all the time because what is it? 2 years ago, 16.5 million people watched the Indy 500, the Coca-Cola 600, and the Monaco Grand Prix on the same day, but only 4.5 of those 16.5 watched all three. So, hey, to me, that's up. There's possible upside out there. Those are people that are amongst that group. There is 12 million people that are just choosing not to watch all three. So, what do we got to do across the board there, right? To me, that's what I take from this. They also wanted to say F1 TV being their streaming package could skew the numbers. I would be shocked. I mean, literally eat a shoe shocked if that's more than 200,000 people on F1 TV. Just knowing what I know about the streaming world and the numbers and knowing intimately some F1 TV numbers, I would be shocked. So, hey, okay, call it 350,000. It's still not a massive change to what they, where they would be. Yep. So we'll see there. Before we move on from this episode, because it's been a long one, we've gone through a lot. We do have the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs starting this weekend at Darlington, and therefore we have put together some grids and our predictions. So did you put one together?
Yeah, I kind of threw one together. I don't know if I will be as lights out with my grid as I was with my picks this weekend, because I picked out of the 4 motorsports races, I think Cup, Trucks, IndyCar, and F1, I picked 3 winners and had a second place finish. So
that was pretty impressive.
I'm not sure what that would pay in a parlay or if I would have put that money on DraftKings and some kind of whatever the groups. But I have Stenhouse, Wallace, McDowell, Harvick going out in the first round.
So I only have one different. Go ahead.
Keselowski, Reddick, Blaney, Chastain going out in the second round. Logano, Bell, Buescher going out in the third round. And then in Phoenix, I've got Truex, Larson, Byron, Hamlin racing for it. Hamlin takes the win for the championship.
All right. So we're actually pretty close, but I've got some big differences. So here's mine. So the round of 16, the first round knockouts, Stenhouse, Chastain, McDowell, Harvick. I just don't believe the one team has been bringing the speed they need. I believe in the team to execute, but I don't know. They just haven't looked like the team that went and dominated Nashville. The second round, I got Reddick, Blaney, Wallace, Logano exiting. Bad round for Penske. The 22 team has told me pretty simply they lack speed, and they're not sure where to find it right now. And so if they lack it, I'm assuming the 12 is going to lack it. That's not going to work for them. The 45 team has just been unbelievable, in their own words, at being able to find ways to lose races. So I just don't know if they can make it to that second round like that. And then Bubba Wallace, I think, I mean, that he's the X factor to me. I think he makes it easily to the first round because of Kansas, but I don't know about making it to the second round. The third one, Keselowski, Bell, Buescher, Larson, out. See you later. Just don't think they make it through either on speed or playoff points or just execution. And then my championship 4, Martin Truex, he's definitely getting there. Kyle Busch, I got the 8 team making it because this guy is motivated to make this happen. William Byron, of course, has been one of the best cars all year, and Denny Hamlin. And of course, I have Denny Hamlin as my 2023 champion because it's always his year till it isn't. And I've been saying that for probably, I don't know, maybe since I got into the TV world. And so, Denny, I'm imploring you for one time, put it all together. I know you can get to Phoenix. I know you can win there and go get that championship and make me look smart for once. Denny, you got this. Chris Gabehart, the 11 team, this is the time. Denny, now or never, let's make it happen.
Denny Denny does really, really well when he's under contract pressure.
This could be it.
I know, but he probably won't be under contract pressure by the time we get to the championship.
Did we
like to screw this up?
He likes to say he needs chaos. He likes chaos around him.
He does love chaos. He does well with chaos.
He does well with chaos.
He creates chaos for himself so that he does well in chaos.
So I might. What I'm thinking
Denny,
is,
call me.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking is I'm going to go up to him and have like a chaos meter throughout the playoffs. Be like, all right, what chaos are we at? How are we looking? What chaos?
Yeah.
What's
if
going
Denny
on?
had chaos, then we're picking him. A couple nuggets on that now that you've talked. We are pretty similar. I'm not as bullish on Busch. I do think that Kyle could will himself into the Final Four. I'm with you on that. I feel like they're going to have to do with no mistakes. But speaking of willing themselves, I saw your pick on Chastain going out in the first round, but I feel like Ross is capable of willing himself at least to the second round. I kind of wanted to take McDowell to the second round, but I don't. That's tough. Which round is the Roval in? Is it in the? It's in the second round. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure, right? It's the second.
Man,
yeah, because
I think it is in the second round.
Darlington, Kansas, Bristol.
Man, if McDowell could make it to the second round, then he could make it to the third round.
He could.
And
trust me,
he's
they know it.
Thinking that.
Oh, they know it. I spoke to that team on Saturday, and they had an unfortunate deal going on that weekend. But they could. I mean, I shouldn't have knocked him out in the first round. But
if you're making
I was lazy with that one.
If you're a fan out there that's making multiple grids right now, and I don't know where, maybe it's in your fantasy league with your buddies or DraftKings or whatever, if you're trying to get serious about it. If you have a grid with McDowell going out in the first round, that's fine. If you make another grid where you want to move McDowell through, I think you put McDowell in the round of 8.
I like that one. I
think he either does it or he doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, I think.
And you know what? Hold on. If he makes the round of 8, I say he gets the championship 4.
Where are we going here? I think if he gets the championship 4, he wins 5 championships in a row.
I think if you get that team to the round of 8, they are guaranteed the championship 4 because it will just it's written. It's written in the stars at that point.
Well, here's the thing that you don't like. This is the stuff that happens that you don't think about, and I can't say this factually. It's just other than experience, and then also incentives. But like, if he makes it to the round of 8, right? I'm looking at my round of 8 right now. I've got Logano, Bell, Buescher, but okay, hang on. I've got Truex, Larson. Let me say this a different way. My round of 8, but I'm going to put McDowell in. I'm looking at Toyota, Chevy, Toyota, Chevy, Ford.
Yeah.
So if McDowell can get himself to the round of 8, he will be one of 2 Fords, right, on my bracket. Mm-hmm. So if he goes that far, now you have the full force of Roush Yates, Ford Performance behind you. There, that car, just by if they could will themselves that far, will get more help. Maybe will it do anything? Will it matter? I don't know. But out of the however many 10, 12 engines that Roush Yates delivers every single week to the racetrack, that 34 car will be getting the best one at that point, or at least the second best one.
Well, it is an interesting thought. We'll see how smart we are. We do have one more person who wants to talk about their bracket. That is producer Josh. Josh, come on in here. What do you got?
So Landon and I have round of 16 identical. We think McDowell, Stenhouse, Harvick, Wallace. Mm-hmm. Remove them. Round of 16 not going through. We start to differentiate on the round of 12 with me taking Keselowski over Logano. I think right now RFK is too hot to say that Logano's going to advance past round of 12. I think Keselowski's got it all sorted. He's been doing really well, especially with Talladega in that round and how RFK handled Daytona. I think that's a really good showing for what we can expect for them on that track. You move into the round of 8. I take Byron, Hamlin, Buescher, and Busch. I don't know why. I just feel like it's going to be 4 different teams are going to be battling for the championship at the end. And I'm the only one who's going to take not Hamlin for the championship. I put Byron in there because he won Phoenix earlier this year.
I love that.
He already has it all sorted. He knows what he needs to do. And I think Byron's going to be your champion for the 2023 Cup Series.
It's a very popular pick.
Did I not pick William Byron way early? This might have even before we published a single podcast. When we recorded like 5 podcasts and we didn't even put them out in the public. Yep. Didn't I say... I think I said something about William. I love that pick. That's a really good one.
I think you called him the champ way back early in the year. I think when he won Phoenix or something, when we were doing those test pods.
Josh, that's a great pick. And I think that William Byron could surprise a lot of people this year. He's been so good.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
People, they just don't. I don't know. We always overlook him. But I don't know. I want to be fair. Like, Martin Truex. I almost just said Ryan Truex. Martin Truex just won the regular season championship. He's been just lights out. Denny has been on whatever Denny is on right now.
He's dependable.
He's on chaos, like just chaos mode.
I feel like if you're gonna take Truex and Hamlin, you gotta drop Busch from my bracket. Of anyone, I would say you drop Busch. He's just been he was really good early on in the season on those tracks like Fontana. He won. He just seems to be able to get more out of the car and be in the right position at the right time.
I think he's just conserving energy.
Mm-hmm.
he's just been conserving the energy a little bit to bring it full force in the playoffs. So you just watch. Randall, Burnett, and those guys are going to put it together. Guys, that was fun. Let's see how smart we are. I think that's it for the pod. Thanks for joining us with your picks, Josh, producer Josh. Check out themoneylap.com. We'll see you next week. Peace. Hey, before you go, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, click the bell icon below to be alerted to our latest videos. We also request that you let us know every single thing that we did wrong in this video or prior ones in the comment section below. We might just go through and answer them, or you'll make it the next episode of the podcast or our next video. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to be able to listen to this podcast on the go. And subscribe to our newsletter at themoneylap.com to get the best 5 minutes in motorsports delivered directly to your email inbox every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks for watching.